Hello and welcome. Very good evening. You're watching the Sunday edition of the Urban Debate. I'm Afrida Rahman Ali. And yes, today the big announcement made by the Drug Controller General of India, the much awaited news of the emergency use approval of not one but two vaccines in India, the Covishield and the Covaxin. So DCGI has approved Covishield made by Serum Institute of India along with Covaxin, which is an indigenous vaccine by Bharat Biotech for restricted emergency use after recommendations made by the subject expert committee. Now, while this news is being welcomed by one and all, like I said, it's a much awaited piece of information. It is also bound to bring hope for a COVID-free India. But then there are certain concerns around the approvals, particularly with the Bharat Biotech's Covaxin. All India Drug Action Network, or AIDN, which is an independent network of NGOs in the health sector, in a statement said that it is actually shocked that an emergency use approval was recommended for Covaxin since it is still in the clinical trial mode and its efficacy rate is yet to be analyzed. So without the efficacy data being fully disclosed, how is it that the Covaxin has received this emergency use approval? That is the big question that many are raising at the moment. The expert panel, however, says that the recommendation was based on the immunogenicity data. So we will have to break it all down for our viewers. Efficacy data vis-a-vis the immunogenicity data. Can one be, do for the other? That kind of issues and concerns are being raised. The expert panel, however, says that immunogenicity data for 24,000 volunteers after the first dose and 10,000 volunteers after the second dose was used before this recommendation was made. And also experts believe that because of the UK variant, which is highly infectious, that has necessitated the clearance of the Covaxin, which the DCGI says has passed scrutiny of the subject expert committee, and therefore there should not be any doubts cast. So what we want to understand is there somewhere a calculated risk taken? And that is what my guest this evening will help us understand and get the correct perspectives on this. I want to welcome Dr. Virander Singh Chauhan from the International Center of Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology. I hope to get some global perspectives on the latest developments, especially with regards to the safety efficacy issues. Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar will join us shortly. He is the former head of the Epidemiology and Communicable Diseases of the ICMR. Again, an expert voice. We will have Dr. Gangakhedkar also on the show. Chinu Srinivasan, co-convener, All India Drug Action Network, an important voice this evening because, like I said, it's this particular drug action network that has raised the biggest concerns around the approval given to Covaxin. Multiple issues raised. The network says that they are shocked and dismayed by this approval. So we will have Mr. Chinu Srinivasan explain to us what those issues are and what is the fine print really from the announcements that were made earlier this morning. Dr. D. Roy, former Deputy Drugs Controller of India, also from the Central Drug Standard Control Organization. This is extremely important that we understand the CSDCO guidelines. Was there any sort of compromise done to the guidelines which the government itself has put out? Were there some steps that were compressed in order to give approval to these two vaccines? I welcome all of you to Urban Debate this evening. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to go straight to the first big question that is primary today. The Covaxin's efficacy data is still not available. A restricted emergency use in clinical trial mode is being permitted. Given that the phase 3 trials are still underway, was this a hurried move? Now, that is the question we are asking. Can I put that across straight to Dr. D. Roy, who's the former Deputy Drugs Controller of India. Dr. Roy, your views on this. Was there any sort of compromise to the guidelines done? This is a matter of public health. Are there any calculated risks being taken?
Good evening, Afridi. In fact, today, since morning, I am asked these questions by so many TV channels. And my reply is, I welcome to this decision of the DCGI and the subject expert committee, because you have to think that this is a pandemic situation, and under this pandemic situation we have given the permission for the emergency use. This is not a normal situation. In fact, for a normal situation, to get a vaccine clearance by the Drug Controller General of India, it takes years together. But at this juncture, we have to consider the risk-benefit ratio and the data submitted by the company, Bharat Biotech. On the basis, the subject expert committee constituted by Drug Controller General India, they have taken a decision for the giving this emergency use purpose, and accordingly, DCGI, he gave the clearance. So again, I'm telling, there is the expert committee, definitely they have examined all the data. And after getting the satisfaction on this data, they have given this clearance. So we, at this juncture, we must utilize this position. And also you should keep it in mind that the Bharat Biotech vaccine, it is our indigenous made. The vaccine which is being manufactured by Serum Institute, that was invented by AstraZeneca along with Oxford University. That is not our indigenous vaccine, but this is our indigenous vaccine. So we should rely on it. We should rely on its efficacy and safety data.
Okay.
That's all. Okay. So there is no question.
All right. You're saying that we should be convinced that there is a subject expert committee that has done a thorough job. You are saying, yes, there is a risk-benefit analysis which is being done by the experts. Chinu Srinivasan, are you convinced by that? In fact, if when I go through the entire guidelines, yes, there is a certain clause which says on case-by-case basis, clinical development programs may proceed through a seamless approach to expedite the development of a vaccine for which there is an unmet medical need in the country. Given that this is there in the fine print and given what we just heard from Dr. Roy, what is your opinion?
I think whether we should approve with a lot of alacrity or not should not depend on whether it is an indigenous vaccine or it is a foreign vaccine. The same rigorous standards should apply to all. And this is not to say that we doubt what were the reasons of the SEC subject expert group. But our only request is, if you made this unusual and unprecedented decision, I don't think I've heard about this in any drug which has been approved for public use before its efficacy is out. So this is unnecessarily exposing more people to this vaccine. Probably, yes, the safety is assured, we are told, but we don't know because safety data and immunogenicity data is only for 2-3 months. So any clinical trial should try to minimize the impact of the new drug in as little as minimum number of people as possible. This unnecessarily does the opposite and without even assuring the efficacy. And then the government press release has said this is approved in something called clinical trial mode. This is a kind of a new creature which I never heard about this. What is the clinical trial mode? Okay, and so say it is still clinical trial is being done, but we are giving the vaccine to those who want it. So then if it is a clinical trial mode, my question is, will the compensation mechanisms which are there in the clinical trial rules apply to these people who are undergoing clinical trial mode type of use of this vaccine? In fact, and the larger question is, we don't have a clinical trial for compensation for post-licensure. But this they say is not post-licensure. This is clinical trial mode. And then the third thing is, they have just tried to justify this unusual mode of approval of this by saying that it will help us tackle the new strains which are coming. Now, I've not seen anywhere in the protocol or in the CTRA entry of this particular Bharat Biotech vaccine that it is going to deal with all the new strains of coronavirus, because it was not even anticipated. So how can they now post facto justify a patently wrong decision? And
so basically, Mr. Srinivasan, you are not immediately convinced by the arguments of risk-benefit analysis, by the point about the new variant can be taken care of and the immediate approval was necessary. I want to go across to Dr. Raman Gangakhedkar. Good evening, Dr. Gangakhedkar. I want to bring you in this conversation to understand from you that what the network that Mr. Srinivasan represents says is the implications of a public rollout of an untested product and the lack of transparency is a matter of huge concern. And in fact, this particular group of NGOs actually urging the DCGI to reconsider the recommendations of the SEC that led to granting the emergency use approval to Covaxin. My question to you, Dr. Gangakhedkar, is that even experts who represent the government point of view have conceded. In fact, we spoke to Dr. Guleria, the AIIMS director. He's conceded that yes, Covaxin is still in the process of its third phase trials, and that will go on. And the primary vaccine will be Covishield. In the meanwhile, it will complete its clinical trial. Are we to go by this entire plan of action?
No, that part, no, the last statement, I really can't comment because I am not a big decision maker in that case. There are a few things which I would just place for consideration. One of the most important things which we must understand is we do not know what data was discussed in subject expert committee meeting. Now, to assume that there was no discussion on efficacy perhaps would be assuming that they did not have any kind of data before they came out with a support to recommend this particular thing, which is difficult. No, for me, I would not like to speculate. Perhaps I would still believe that this is the first attempt that India has done so far in last 3 decades when everything is perhaps what they have done for the first time is a press briefing where they came out in open and they discussed about they told about the statements that they are making. This is a first baby step, you may call. Second issue which I would say is accelerated trials have suddenly started from HIV era. Now in HIV, these were applied in one particular way. That was also challenging because people used to say at that point in time that you're not conducting trials in a classical manner. Why should I believe them? But the nature of pandemic, the fears that we had of its spread, the fear of death in large numbers perhaps ruled the time, and there were modifications made. Now here also the HIV pandemic was not as rapidly spreading as this COVID-19 pandemic is. And you actually, if you see, US FDA, they looked at those fast-tracking approaches slightly differently. If you look at MHRA, they have looked at it in a different manner. Suddenly you find that some of the statements which even MHRA has made, where they said that you can give the second dose, between 4 and 12 weeks. You look at their approach where they suddenly said that you can provide 1 dose to everybody and the second dose can be taken subsequently between 4 to 12 weeks time. Now, these kinds of approaches, they have also not released their own data. But I assume that people are trying to do their best. I think they look at the data and then they decide, unless we have an evidence that supports that.
Yes, I mean, I understand that we have to assume, we have to trust, we have to have faith, all of that I understand. But the question still remains that, the health minister even today said that whether you take the vaccine or not would be swaichha. It's up to you. Ultimately, this is not a hard and fast compulsory imposition that the government is doing, and therein lies the problem. If there is a trust deficit, if there are questions and concerns which are unaddressed, it may not inspire confidence in the general public, and that is where I want to bring you in, Dr. Virander Singh Chauhan, on this. And if you can help us understand in the overall context, now that we are in a place where we are talking about these difficult terms which the common person cannot probably understand, efficacy, the immunogenicity based on which Covaxin is now being given the approval. It is a backup vaccine. The first phase, it seems, the government says, will be taken care of by Covishield. The Covaxin may not even be required. So are we unnecessarily then fussing over it?
So let me say, Bharat Biotech started developing this vaccine So way back in June of last year. The platform that Bharat Biotech decided to use is a time-tested platform. The Chinese vaccine, 2 of them have been developed on this, approved not only in China but also in UAE, Bahrain, and so on. So, but I'm not comparing this vaccine with any other vaccine, except for this platform that Bharat Biotech has used is reliable in the sense it has been inactivated viral vaccine have been used. There are many examples of that. Now, Bharat Biotech submitted their phase 1 safety data. I believe more than 1,000 people were seen. When you do phase 1, of course, you look primarily at safety. But in your phase 1 trial, also you look at immune responses. It's always inbuilt in that. So all phase 1 trial will also look at whether you raise antibodies or immune responses or not. So there must be some data. I just want everyone to remember, the viewer to remember, that Bharat Biotech and Serum both had submitted their papers some time back, few weeks back. And they were told to go back and produce more data. And I totally agree with Raman, my dear friend, that we don't know how much data is presented. And I have deep trust in our regulatory system because I deal with our regulatory system. And this is not to support or criticize. It's just that I cannot imagine them not having looked at the data. This is also true at the same time that there is some cloud of clarity, which disclarity, which will probably become clear in next day or 3 or 4 more statements will be made. But I cannot imagine that the expert committee wouldn't have looked at additional data. Now, the only question which you raised and others have already answered that then what is the difference between the 2 approval, if there is any difference between 2 approval? What we heard Dr. Somani said, there were no difference between the 2 approval. But we also hear, and I can only make intelligent guesses on what we hear, is that the Bharat Biotech vaccine will still continue to produce more data in a clinical trial mode. Safety is definitely not a concern. So I will break into two. I break into 2 parts. Safety of this vaccine also, to say that we are exposing people to an unsafe vaccine, that will be incorrect. How efficacious this is, the corresponding vaccines in China based on identical platform ranges from 80 to 85%. So my guess would be is efficacy should range. Whether it does or not, I do not. It should range between 80 to 85%. And therefore, it's a good backup plan, as Dr. Guleria had said, that this will be a consistent with
it is a good backup plan. There are many experts who have expressed confidence in it. And like you said, the subject expert committee comprises of analysts, researchers, doctors from various different domain experts. So yes, a fair point that perhaps this was well thought out. This is a thorough job. Let's hope it is a thorough job done before the approvals given to these 2 vaccines. I would like to just pull out a quick explainer because we have put out a lot of information, a lot of analysis. Let's get some clarity, quick points on the concerns and the clarifications that have come in on the vaccines. Let's play it out, please.
While the DCGI has given a nod for 2 vaccines, the concerns continue to persist over the approval given to Bharat Biotech's Covaxin. Now, experts are saying that there isn't an issue with this, but nevertheless, we just want to take you through what 2 sides of the opinion are on this. Now, there is a concern over the approval being given despite no efficacy data. The experts are saying that Covaxin is only a backup and it's only there if more doses are needed. Essentially, that Bharat Biotech is a backup option to Serum India's Covishield, which is, as Dr. Guleria from the AIIMS told us, that it is going to be the backbone. Serum India's vaccine is going to be the backbone, whereas Covaxin is going to be the backup. The second concern is that the approval has come despite incomplete phase 3 trial. Efficacy data also comes in only post phase 3 trials completion, but these trials are still ongoing. Experts, on the other hand, tell us that phase 3 trials are going to go on, they're going to continue. Irrespective of this vaccine rollout, it has no bearing on that. And finally, the concern over Covaxin's nod is that there is very limited data available as the vaccine has been insufficiently tested and it's unproven because phase 3 trials are still underway. Experts, on the other hand, say that it has passed safety and immunogenicity tests and it is overall a safe vaccine to give.
Right. Okay, so that was just a quick explainer to put everything in perspective. Dr. Roy, I just want to come to you to understand once again that when we talk about choosing one vaccine over the other, right now it seems that there is no option, but the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, which of course hasn't got the approvals as of now, do you envisage a stage where as we go along, one would actually have an option to pick and choose? Would we have that kind of options going forward? What do you see could be the way forward? Because this is just the first phase. Very limited number of people, given our population, will get access to vaccine. What happens next?
You are asking me to respond? You are asking me to respond?
Yes, Dr. Roy, please.
Yeah. In fact, if you consider other vaccine, so many companies, they are manufacturing the same vaccines. And it is up to the doctors who will prescribe which brand. So now in India, for the COVID vaccines, we have two companies' vaccines available. And as per the regulators, we have given the permission to two companies to manufacture it. Now it is up to the users. User means the medicos who will give this particular vaccine to the patients or to the recipient. So decision will be taken by him. But again, one thing I want to just emphasize it here, that this is an emergency use permission. Emergency use permission, you can say it is nothing but an extended phase 3 clinical trial. So from this also we'll get so many data. Not only that, I think, I am not sure about it, but definitely Drug Control India in his license definitely mentioned certain conditions to the manufacturers. And those conditions has to be fulfilled. Some of the participants expressed is concern whether this particular vaccines can give any adverse effects or not. Now at this juncture, or whether it will be compensated or not in case any adverse reaction. Now all these things we have to see in the license. Definitely Drug Control India, he has given certain conditions to the manufacturers, and that has to be fulfilled because it's an emergency clearance. It is not a normal clearance. And we have under the new clinical trial rule, we have these provisions also. We have these provisions.
Yes.
So DCGI has not done
let
anything
me get
wrong.
a response from Shinu Srinivasan. Mr. Srinivasan, there are quite a few riders which Dr. Roy has also emphasized, and I can just read it out to you what DCGI says. It is for restricted use in emergency situation in public interest as an abundant precaution in clinical trial mode. So all those conditions are there, those stipulations are there.
No, restricted use is also given to the serum vaccine. Now, when you are going to use a vaccine against 3 crore and 30 crore people in 1 year, there is a question of restricted use. It's kind of an oxymoron, giving it a large population and calling it a restricted use. Secondly, restricted use is not in the law at all. There are some provisions for waiving certain requirements. But even that would be debatable in this kind of a thing. So, and what was the hurry? Third point is, what was the hurry? Because we already have serum vaccine with a lot of stock. So there is a question of backup stock. This is a very absurd argument. And what was the hurry to push through a vaccine when the efficacy was not even clear?
Can I get a quick last word? I'm running out of time. Quick last word, Dr. Ganga Khetkar. Any major concerns you have at this stage, or you think India is very much on the right track? We are on a firm footing when it comes to our battle against COVID-19.
No, I think I would wait for the evidence to say what we are doing is right or wrong. No, given the fact that I don't have any evidence,
Okay.
I would not like to disbelieve the regulator. That's one. Second issue which we have to also understand that all these regulators, when they are using different lenses. Perhaps the lenses have changed after the emergence of UK's variant, because you see Japan suddenly going in for lockdown of its own kind. You see rest of the world, no, European bloc, they are extremely worried about the spread. Even US is as much worried about the spread. I think when the decline is occurring, certain factors may
Yes.
have played up on them, but I have no clue. So I would just be
Okay,
as
so
speculative, but I
certain
would
factors
not
may have been
anything.
responsible for the clearance given to Covaxin. When it comes to Covishield, we don't hear too many of those concerns, but as of now, the government is clear that in the first phase, Covishield will take care of the priority list that has been drawn out, which of course includes the frontline health workers primarily. Thanks so much to all of you for joining us this evening and for giving us all the clarity that we needed on the big announcement by DCGI to approve 2 vaccines in India for emergency use. Thanks for giving us all the important information.